Imagine, yeah.
It's very much developed afterwards, you know. There's no love lost on the pitch before or after, I think, as well. You know, even though you'd still, because they're such good guys, you'd say hello and all the rest of it. But it's very much developed afterwards as well. I think there's been a sense of recognition from both sides, you know, about the quality of what both teams brought to the game, and especially that Kerry team at that time, to me, was the best Gaelic football team ever until the present Dublin team came along.
Kevin Moran there in conversation with Joe. The full piece we're digging out now on offtheball.com and as well as at youtube.com/offtheball. Best case, worst case scenarios, Nathan Murphy. We've been on a bit of an odyssey over the last week, going through every single club in the Premier League before things start back up tomorrow. We might get your final table predictions in just a moment, but there are two more clubs to go to first of all. West Ham and Wolves. We'll start with West Ham. They're on 27 points in 16th place. They're in big danger of going down. David Moyes at the helm. How is this going to finish in your view for them?
I would worry for West Ham. I thought initially when I started thinking about them and looking back in their season that they'd have enough quality, but then you start going through their squad and I'm wondering where it is. Okay, Issa Diop at the back is one of the better centre halves in the Premier League. Ogbonna's got a lot of international experience with Italy, and then as you move up you have the likes of Felipe Anderson, who I think is a really impressive player. Declan Rice, who very solid, keeps things ticking over in the middle midfield, and Snodgrass is the one who adds a little bit of spark up front. But I just wonder, as always with West Ham, who's going to score the goals on a consistent basis. And I just think they lack a bit of character in that team. And there's enough good teams around them who've struggled before the break that I think will rebound over the next little while, that West Ham might find themselves in difficulty. That's a big old stadium to be playing in front of with absolutely nobody there at the Olympic Stadium. I know people criticise the atmosphere at times, and they have a difficult fixture list. They start back with Wolves, Spurs and Chelsea in their first three games. You could be looking at taking 0 points from those, and then they have a lot of games against teams around them, against the likes of Norwich, Watford. They play Manchester United, penultimate game of the season, and then Aston Villa on the final day of the season. And you wouldn't at all be surprised if that was a winner takes all. What a game that could be. West Ham against Villa. I think it's been coming for a couple of years with West Ham. There's been a constant change of managers. They spent a fortune on players and on wages without ever really getting a team that fully connected. And yeah, I would have big concerns for West Ham over the final few weeks.
What's the best case scenario then?
Best case scenario is that they hit a decent run of form, that, as I say, they have players of the calibre of Felipe Anderson, who, if they were to go down, I think would be snapped up by another Premier League team instantly, that they find somebody who can score enough goals to keep them in the Premier League. Simple as that. That David Moyes uses all his experience and they just about survive. But looking at their fixture list, everything that's gone on previous to this, conceding a lot of goals all season, if I was a West Ham supporter, I'd be very worried right now.
Wolves are in 6th on 43 points. The best case scenario here is that they qualify for the Champions League, which might be enough to finish 5th. How likely is that to happen?
I hope it happens. I love this Wolves team. I love watching them. I mentioned last week I have a 7-year-old who's a big Wolves fan, so I find myself watching a lot of Wolves. But I think technically they're an outstanding team to watch. And in Nuno, they have one of the most impressive managers in the Premier League, both from a tactical point of view, considering he was a goalkeeper, to come out and be able to do what he does with all these brilliantly talented outfield players, but also just as a character and as a personality. There's no real nonsense with him. He's one of those post-match interviews you watch and think there's a hint of honesty, at least, to what he's saying. And they can win games in all manner of means. And against the better teams, they're always going to pick up and cause a lot of hassle because they're so good on the counter-attack. They've so much pace. We'd Matt Doherty on the show last week talking about Adama Traore being not just the fastest player in the league, but probably the fastest player in world football. And I was reading an article on the Wolves website where he'd been working on his pace over the last few months to just try and get a little bit quicker. And the way they've changed things around, Nuno's never been afraid to make slight tactical adjustments, whether it's in midfield, whether it's moving Matt Doherty up or back, and now with Traore and Doherty together. They've been brilliant down the right-hand side. They're really fit. They score a lot of late goals. The one question is, if Jimenez isn't scoring, who else steps up? At times, Neto's got in there. They probably need a bit more from Diogo Jota between now and the end of the season. But any team that has a midfield of Neves and Moutinho, I'm going to get behind. And it'd be brilliant for Wolves. It'd be good for the league, I think, if Wolves could kick on from here. And they don't have the problem of the Europa League to worry about as well, and all the travelling. They're well used to playing game after game, 2 games a week at this stage. It's a good backup option to have come the end of the season. If they do end up finishing 6th or 7th, they know they're going to have this, as we heard today, quick fire Europa League finish. But yeah, I would love to see Wolves kick on from here as a counter-attacking team. And they have the brilliant thing about them is they can do it both ways. They have in the quality of Neves and Moutinho players who can control a game, but they're generally set up actually to let the opposition have the ball. And that's been a difficulty at times against lower teams who don't want to have the ball, that, you know, that they can play these raking 50, 60-yard balls. When you're watching them, everything looks so pre-planned, whether it's Willie Bolly, who I think is back from injury, Connor Cody playing these balls, diagonal balls, 40, 50 yards to Doherty on the right and Johnny on the left. Everything just clicks into place so quickly. So, yeah, they're a brilliant team to watch, and hopefully they can finish the job.
What's the worst case scenario then for them? Is it just it's very unlikely to see this falling apart at the seams, isn't it?
It is. They only scored 1 goal in their last 4 games. So that is an area they're going to need to work on. And it doesn't necessarily need to fall apart, but if they finish outside the Champions League places and they don't go and win the Europa League, they find themselves back in the Europa League, they find themselves back in that slog again next year. It was always going to be interesting last summer to see what Wolves did, because obviously it's a strange situation where George Mendes has such influence on the club and so much control over an awful lot of the players. Whether for the likes of Ruben Neves and Diogo Jota, it was going to be a 2-3 year stop before they move on and are sold for a huge fee to one of the bigger clubs. But it looks as though Wolves are going to try and keep these players and to kick on over the next couple of years and become a greater thing. And it would be a brilliant story if they could. Nuno, rarely spoken about in terms of those top jobs, in terms of a Tottenham or any of the top 5-6 teams. But I think if they continue the way they're going, he's got to be right in the mix. If, say, for example, Jose Mourinho didn't last at Tottenham.
Very quickly then, Nathan, who's going to be the top 5? Who's going to be the bottom 3 come the end of the season?
Well, Liverpool, Manchester City, Leicester, Chelsea, Wolves in 5th, Manchester United 6th, Tottenham 7th, Sheffield United 8th, Arsenal 9th.
Bottom 3 then?
Norwich, West Ham, and Villa.
Norwich, West Ham, Villa. And we had Conor Hourhan on the show earlier on and everything like that.
I didn't want to say it.
You go ahead and relegate him straight away.
Villa or Brighton.
Villa or Brighton, right? Okay, I see. Well, it's back tomorrow night, Nathan. Are you you must be buzzing? I mean,
I am buzzing. It's great to be able to sit down and look at the weekend, and I'm looking at Saturday, and there's 4 games. I'm thinking, West Ham Wolves 5:30 Saturday evening. I'll sit down and watch that, and then there's another game after it. And then we're back Sunday. We've got Sheffield United, Newcastle. I'm not going to be stuck in an airport all Sunday night. I'll be back home in time for the second game. Then the Merseyside derby Sunday night. It's just going to be,
It's infectious, your enthusiasm for the Premier League, to say the least.